Nothing makes me happier than reading all the letters you guys send into the channel. Here's one that crossed my desk today and I think you guys will enjoy. Dear Brian P., my name's Tyler and I'm 11 years old. I like to play Apex Legends, but I need a better graphics card, one that isn't too expensive. Too bad all the new RTX cards cost a f***ing arm and a leg, and my mom said she'd have to at least 10 different guys to make that kind of money. And the real of it is that goes around until my dad gets out of prison. It's a real type situation. So give me a recommendation already, you dumb bearded Adorable, Tyler. I think I've got just the thing for you, buddy. Let's go. This video is brought to you by Bookmark.com. Bookmark's a free website builder where you can create a professional-looking website with hosting in just a couple minutes by answering 7 simple questions. Bookmark's AI engine, Ada, literally builds your website right in front of your face in less than 2 minutes, and you can edit virtually every aspect of the page once it's complete. You can also upgrade to connect your existing domain and create an online store with e-commerce integration. It's awesome. Click the link in the description below or check them out at Bookmark.com. Yo, I'm Brian P. You're watching Bad Seed Tech, and today we're taking a look at the GTX 1660 Ti XLR8 Gaming OC from PNY. For transparency, PNY did send this card out on loan for review, but as you should know by now, that doesn't affect my review in any way. So the 1660 Ti is an interesting little card. You're basically getting a Turing GPU, but without ray tracing and without deep learning AI. You're also getting the same Turing NVIDIA encoder that we see on the 20 series, which is going to allow you a little more juice to stream and encode, and it's optimized for OBS. You've got 6 gig of GDDR memory at 12 gigabits per second. You're also getting 1536 CUDA cores with a base clock speed of 1500 megahertz and a boost of 1815. So the XLR8 Gaming OC version of this card that we have here today is a single fan design, and it's a small boy. It looks perfect for ITX small form factor builds. It measures 9.25 inches long, and it's powered by a single 8-pin connector with a TDP of 120 watts. It technically does have support for triple monitors, but just be aware that that comes in the form of one DisplayPort 1.4, one HDMI 2.0, and one dual-link DVI. It has no lighting of any kind, no backplate, and it comes into market just a little north of the proposed MSRP, landing at $299.99. An interesting note here is that the processor isn't just a cut-down version of what you'd find on the GTX 2060. This is its own unique Turing processor, the TU116. A way more interesting thing here is that depending on the benchmark, this thing trades blows with the GTX 1070, a card whose models start around $399. I have seen some sale prices on some entry level for like $330, but they have some absolute trash coolers. Testbed today is an Intel 8700K running at 5 gig. We've also got 32 gig of G.Skill Trident RGB running at 3200 megahertz, and all the games are going to be running off a Samsung Pro 860 SSD. Let's see how this thing stacks up in some benchmarks. Opening up with GTA 5, yeah, it's old balls for sure, but I included it because there's loads of testing information out there about it, and it's actually still in the top 5 on Steam for current players. Running FXAA on and MSAA x2 at 1080p, we're able to pull an average of 101 frames, very high settings, and 136 average with high settings, so you're in great shape for a 144 hertz panel. At 1440p, we're still seeing some pretty respectable numbers here with an average of 88 frames per second with high settings and 51 with very high. You may have to sacrifice some detail, but you'll be able to achieve a 60 FPS minimum lock at 1440p. Very decent. Moving into Far Cry New Dawn, this is the Dunia engine on DirectX 11. We're seeing very solid performance here. At 1080p high settings, we're averaging 102 FPS with a minimum of 80. At 1440p, an average of 73 with a minimum of 62, so again, a 60 FPS lock is achievable at 1440p. Moving to Ultra on this title will only cost you between 5 and 7 frames per second, but it still looks gorgeous running at high settings. On to Metro Exodus. This is running DirectX 12 on the 4A engine. This benchmark is absolutely punishing, and in my experience, more demanding than the actual game. At 1080p high settings, we see a 99% average frame rate of 59 FPS. At 1440p, we see 44 FPS. So no high refresh rates here, but again, this is a very demanding title and one of the best looking games I've seen to date. Shadow of the Tomb Raider is a DX12 title built off the Foundation engine. At 1080p high settings, the game looks gorgeous and we see an average of 93 FPS. Moving to 1440p, we see an average of 62, minimum 52. Worth noting here that different sections of this benchmark are more demanding demanding than others, and so we see an overall 95% performance of 54 FPS at 1440p and 79 FPS at 1080p. And wrapping up with some Apex Legends. This title was tough because there's no canned benchmark and because I'm admittedly still pretty trash at Apex. Nonetheless, after numerous attempts at close to duplicate runs and a couple of pissed off squad mates, I've got some numbers. Bear in mind too that these numbers are all over the board when you're in game. At 1080p high settings, I saw anywhere from high 60s to a ceiling of about 100 FPS with the average running somewhere in the mid 80s. At 1440p, you're looking at more mid 40s with the high approaching 80 FPS, but with long draws or firefights, you're looking right around 50 FPS for average. But again, it's all over the map. I literally could have spent an entire day just benchmarking this title. So as for overclocking, the card took plus 140 to the core clock and an easy plus 1000 to the memory clock. It would actually take a full 1500 to the memory, but it started negatively affecting the core clock speeds there, and I saw the scores and the synthetics start to go down. So the sweet spot was right there at that 140-1000. That left us with a core clock max of right at 2100 megahertz and the memory speed cooking right along at 7000. It's really not worth going back through all the games again, but that overclock managed to hold stable in all the games that I tested, and it provided between like a 5 and a 10 FPS bump depending on the title. So even with the overclock, the max temperature that I ever saw out of this card, no matter how hard I challenged it, was 69 degrees. And the fan noise there was more than acceptable. If you've got any kind of loud CPU cooling situation like I do, you won't even hear this thing. So for just under $300, questions I'd be asking myself as a consumer if I were in the market for a card at this price point. This or the 1070? Well, this. Even though they trade blows in the benchmarks, you're getting newer tech with the 1660 Ti, both in the form of adaptive shading, and you're also getting that newer NVENC encoding. And the drivers are going to support this card better as we move forward. This or the 1060? This, for all the same reasons as the 1070, except this thing smokes the 1060 in performance pretty much every time. This or the RX 590? This. I don't have one of my own in-house to test, but I look at the same benchmarks you guys do, and the 590 seemingly gets beat out by this card the overwhelming majority of the time. Though AMD has responded by lowering some prices on the RX 590, and you can find those right now as low as $250. This or a GTX 2060? Now we have an interesting question. 2060 models range from about $450 on the top end to as low as $349 for an entry level, with PNY's own XLR8 Gaming edition of the 2060 coming in right at $399. The 2060 will beat out the 1660 in every benchmark, plus you get access to the rest of the features you normally get with touring. This becomes more of a discussion when the 1660 Ti is priced at the entry-level 280. It becomes less of a discussion when it's priced around 300, and it's no discussion at all for some of those 1660 Ti models costing upwards of $330. Regardless, if you are locked into this budget tier, the XLR8 Gaming is a solid option, particularly in small form factor builds where space is a premium and you don't want to worry about temperatures. It also doesn't hurt that it has some very solid 1080p performance, allowing you to take advantage of high refresh panels, as well as some surprisingly capable 1440p performance. Not to mention the bump to performance you get with the new NVENC encoder. This was a smart, calculated move from nvidia in direct response to the RX 590, which this card bests in a lot of ways, including power consumption and temperatures, and it steers that conversation towards 1660 Ti or 2060, or a win-win for NVIDIA. And it's prompted some price drops on the AMD side, not only on the RX 590, but also on a certain Vega 56 card. Interesting times to be a consumer. Big thanks to PNY for the opportunity to demo this card. I will leave some links in the description below if you'd like to grab one for yourself. Today's setup flex comes to us from Travis, aka Shellback Tech. Just a super clean setup all the way down to the cable management. He's got an 8700K at 5 gig, an X62 cooler from NZXT, 32 gig of Trident Z at 3200 megahertz, and a GTX 1080 Ti Strix GPU. Main panel is an Acer Predator curved 32-inch 1440p G-Sync, and he's running a Corsair K55 and an M65 Pro mouse. You can find him on virtually every platform at Shellback Tech, where he's currently streaming and creating content for YouTube. Thanks so much for the submission, Travis. If you'd like to be featured on an upcoming setup flex, hit the card in the corner for details. And that's it for this time. I'm Brian P. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit that sub button, and until next time, stay up.